everybody, and welcome back to the Footy Frontline Podcast, brought to you by My Betting Mates. My name is Nick Tabano, and I'm joined here by Ollie Caffrey to go through all the big doings from Gather Round over the weekend. Ollie, you were over there in Adelaide for all the festivities. I guess take us through it all.
Yeah, the second Gather Round. I missed it all last year. I was overseas, so I missed all the hype. But to actually be over there this year, it was really great vibe in Adelaide. Checked out each round. I went to Adelaide Oval Thursday night, Friday at Norwood, and then Mount Barker and Adelaide Hills on Saturday. So, yeah, they've done such a good job with it.
Yeah.
I think Adelaide is actually the perfect city to host it. It's just perfect size for it. You can get around to all the grounds, and like the whole city's behind it. Everywhere you go, they've got Gather Round signs, and hotels and cafes have got Gather Round things up in their stores and everything. So I think if you had it in a bigger city like Sydney, it might get lost. And obviously Sydney is more a rugby league state. Rugby league city. So, yeah, outstanding job once again. And I think it's just going to grow bigger and bigger. Everyone who missed out on it this year, I think, will get a bit of envy and go, okay, I'm going to go across next year. And, yeah, more incentive for people to go next year with the Barossa Valley. Just got announced today on Monday that they're going to host a game next year. So, hopefully Mount Barker can keep one of their games as well, because it's a great facility out there. It was such a cool, unique experience. It was a whole festival vibe out there, and yeah, really enjoyed it. So yeah, they've done a really great job with it. Obviously, it was pinched from the NRL, and the NRL probably pinched it from elsewhere. But yeah, it's a great thing to do once a year, I think, and that's the way it should stay. And Adelaide, yeah, they've nailed it, and I think they deserve to keep it for the foreseeable future.
Well, I guess it sort of is a nice segue to talk about the fact that last week it was reported that the AFL are looking to do multiple gather rounds a year now. I guess, what are your thoughts when you heard that potentially there could be an opening round gather round, a mid-season gather round, and another gather round on top of that, where it's sort of shared between multiple cities? Because when I heard it, I thought, well, I think it's sort of, it's kind of oversaturating, almost a bit too much.
Absolutely, yeah, you're 100%. Spot on there. Yeah, I can't see them doing more than one a year and being success. The whole point of having this gather round in Adelaide, it's the school holidays for Victoria. Everyone can get across, you either drive or you fly, and it is something to look forward to once a year. It's just a bit different. And if you do 3 in the same year, it just doesn't have the same special effect about it. So, yeah, I think keep it in Adelaide. They're doing a magnificent job with it, but I can understand their logic around Tasmania. So maybe a once-off gather round in Tasmania before the team comes in 2028. Maybe do it in 2027 before they come in. So, yeah, I can see why they would be keen to do that. But, yeah, 3 in the same year, don't like it at all. Opening rounds, just make it round 1 and play blockbuster games in Queensland, New South Wales, get stuck in there and compete with the NRL. But, yeah, don't overkill it.
The other part of it was, you mentioned games at Norwood. They've potentially thrown their name forward to be the 20th team. I guess your vibe of being at Norwood, do you feel like, I don't know if there were really Norwood fans out and about, because Norwood obviously weren't playing, but in terms of facility and everything like that, I guess what were your impressions of being at the ground?
Oh, great facilities. They could train there and probably play some preseason games there. Obviously, the AFLW, the Crows, they play games there. They played finals there in the past. So I think they could easily bit an upgrade. They could train there, but yeah, they'd obviously have to play their games at Adelaide Oval. But yeah, there's enough passion there. Whether that's the way the AFL want to go, I think you've seen with Gold Coast, GWS, they want to go into different territory to just expand the game and make it truly national. So a third team in South Australia, there would be more blockbusters in town there. So that would be a cool thing. But yeah, we've seen this so many times before. Local clubs in especially South Australia and Western Australia put up their hand and said, I would like to put a team in the AFL. But yeah, it'd be cool. But I can't see it happening South Australian club or another Western Australian club. I think maybe Canberra, that would be, I think, a really good place to have another club. Or, yeah, the northern club that's been floated about, maybe combine Queensland and Northern Territory. That would be a great idea. That would have its own challenges, being so far away and different climate up there. So, yeah, we definitely need to get to 20 teams, though. You can't just have 19 teams and go, okay, we're just going to have a bye every week. The AFL just wants that 10th game, and the broadcasters would love that. So we'll definitely get to 20 clubs after Tasmania comes in. But, yeah, I think a lot of clubs around the place are going to be putting their hand up for it because, why wouldn't you want to be in the AFL?
Absolutely. And I guess before we completely move on from Gather Round, do you have a specific highlight from when you were there?
It was all great. There weren't too many, they weren't upsets at all. There was a few close games, but I think a lot of people would have tipped the 9 out of 9 on the weekend. So the actual footy wasn't anything spectacular. The Collingwood Hawthorn game came very, very, very close. Arguably, Hawthorn should have won that in the end with how they dominated that last quarter. But, I think just being out at the Adelaide Hills, just how unique it was. I wasn't expecting it to be done anything like that at all. It was so well done, just everything about it, the food, the drinks, just getting into the ground, shuttle buses. Yeah, they did a magnificent job.
Moving back to one of those games at Norwood Oval, one of the big talking points, I guess, to come out of it was, and you saw this firsthand, the Kangas. Another game, another big loss. This was probably, out of the 4 games they've played, probably the worst of the 4 games. They were really not in it from the word go against Brisbane. You saw them firsthand and saw their defensive struggles. I guess, what did you take away from that?
Yeah, they were really poor from the start, like you said. Their midfield had been really good in the first 3 weeks. They've been competitive and kept them in games. But, the Lions had a point to prove, blew them away from the start. And, the defence just couldn't keep up like it had struggled to do in the previous 3 weeks. So there's really no quick fix for them. That's the thing. They've drafted from the midfield. They haven't covered for Ben Mackay. He's gone to Essendon on free agency. They're lacking key tools down there. The one positive for North was Charlie Coleman. He's had some really bad injury struggles, and he's a really nice size, and he just got better as the game went on. So that was the one positive to come out of that game for North Melbourne. It's a bit of a spark there because otherwise it was a pretty dismal day for them. And, it's just going to be hard to see how they stop opposition forwards just getting a run on because they just so undersized down there, so inexperienced, and, probably the last 2 weeks, it might not get much worse because Carlton's forwards, Harry Mackay, Charlie Curnow, arguably 2 of the best key forwards in the game, and the Lions forward line as well. It has struggled the first 3 weeks, but when they're on song, they're one of the best forward line in the competition. So it's going to be tough times for North in the next couple of years. They really need to go into the draft, get some key position players and, hopefully convince some guys in free agency to come across. But as we know, that's been a struggle for them in recent years as well. They've offered big money at other players and it just hasn't worked out. So, hopefully in the draft they can build there because they've got enough midfielders ready to go. It's just, enough support for Nick Larkey up forward and then obviously down back as well.
Is there a way to stem the flow? Is there a way of that they can do it? Because, I mean, you said they just don't have the size. Like, is it just they don't have the cattle?
Yeah, they just don't have the cattle at all. They probably could go with a more defensive game plan. Alistair Clarkson has done that in the past with Hawthorn teams and played really defensively. But, I think he wants to give the supporters something. He knows they're not going to be challenging for finals this year and it's going to be another tough year. But, do you go and lose by 5 goals and kick 50, or do you try and kick 80 and maybe lose by 40 or 50 every week? So it's going to be tough for them, but hopefully there's enough little bright sparks throughout the year, like common on the weekend, to really lift the North Melbourne supporter spirits because they've been through a lot in recent times, and you can't really see too much light there for the rest of the season.
And you'd have to be one of the most positive and optimistic North Melbourne fans going into this weekend when they play the Cats down in Geelong. Jeez. And we'll talk about that in just a sec. We'll start to look ahead to round 5 this week. Football heading back to everyone back at their home grounds and everything. 2 teams in the bye, Collingwood and Sydney this week. But the action starts Thursday night. Melbourne against Brisbane at the MCG. Melbourne, another good win against the Crows. Brisbane off the mark. This is an interesting one at the G because these 2 teams have played out some really, really big games and hotly contested games over the last few seasons.
Yeah, they sure have. 1 point in it at the MCG last year. Melbourne got over the line with a pretty spectacular last 5 minutes. Jake Melsham, who's out with an ACL now, unfortunately, kicked the winning goal that night. But, you go back to the 2022 finals and the Lions, they were absolute massive underdogs, one of the biggest underdogs you've seen for a final. They were paying up to $7 that night and got the job done in pretty amazing fashion. So that will give the Lions a bit of belief there that they know they can beat the D's at the MCG. And even that game last year, the Lions played some really good footy in that game, probably some of the best footy they've played under Chris Fagan. They just got run over at the end, and Chris Fagan spoke about the lessons they learned from that game. I think there's still some lessons to learn because they have been pretty poor in red time since that game as well. But they did get a lot better after that game. But Melbourne are looking really strong at the moment. So to go over to South Australia, you're there for a week. You get the 2 wins over the South Australian teams in 5 days. You couldn't have asked for much more. So they are chock full of confidence at the moment. They will be without Keziah Pickett for this one. Another suspension. They are going to take it to the tribunal. So I just can't see him getting off, though. 3 of very similar incidents in the last 12 months. He just keeps finding himself in trouble with those bumps. So, yeah, he probably needs to sort of tinker with his style a bit just to avoid getting suspended because he's such a dangerous player. He's really important against the Crows, and then they're going to really miss him on Thursday night against the Lions. So you think on form, the D's will get over the line in this one, especially at the MCG. If it was the Gabba, you'd give the Lions more of a chance. But, yeah, I think the D's will continue their winning ways.
It's an interesting one because I think Brisbane would take, even though you are only beating North Melbourne, I think they would have taken a lot of confidence from just the way that they won. They could have easily won that game by a lot more had they kicked straight. I mean, you would have seen it firsthand with how blustery it was over there as well. The ball was going all over the place, it seemed like at points. I think Melbourne will win this one as well at the G. I think, they've had a couple really good wins, as you mentioned, especially that win against Port Adelaide a couple of weeks ago. But against an Adelaide team that were quite desperate last week, like they had to win, and they withstood a bit of that late surge as well from the Crows. It's going to be tough for Brisbane at the G. I mean, bar a couple of wins in the last couple of years, they haven't really had the best record. I think only really, was it one win since 2014? At the MCG?
That semi-final win.
So, obviously they pushed Collingwood on grand final day, but, it hasn't always been smooth sailing for them since 2014. So I do think that Melbourne are going to edge them, but I think Brisbane are going to put up a red-hot fight. And a bit of a tip to look at for punters at home, Christian Petrarca has been in red-hot form, so expect him to be around that 20 disposals mark on Thursday night. Friday night, Bulldogs against Essendon across town at Marvel Stadium. Bulldogs late fight. They stuck it to Geelong right at the end. The Bombers, they just laid down after the first quarter. They were right in it, and then just after quarter time, just completely capitulated.
Yeah, some of the goals they gave up against Port Adelaide on Friday night was just it was amateur hour. That goal just before half time. There were 3 Essendon players in defensive 50 just looked at it, and I think it might have been Jeremy Finlayson or someone like that pounced and kicked a goal, and they just stood there. They didn't even go for the ball. It was amazing. So, yeah, Essendon would be smarting from that performance. They were really good the week before against St Kilda, got over the line. But, yeah, they were just completely blown away by an elite Port Adelaide midfield, it must be said. They are going to be a scary proposition in the next decade. But, yeah, the Bulldogs, there are enough signs there. They have a really poor record against Geelong and to push them all the way and for all their big guns to step up. Libba was amazing. I think 19 clearances. Yeah. Bonson-Pally just doing what he does. He was spectacular once again. And, yeah, Adam Trawler in the midfield as well. All really good. So, yeah, they dominated in midfield but just couldn't get it done. But, yeah, Sam Darcy was really impressive, and hopefully that is the sort of game that can take him forward now. He's had some injury and health troubles in his first couple of seasons, but yeah, it looks a really exciting proposition for the Bulldogs fans.
Tip?
I think the Bulldogs should get it done under the lid. Yeah, I can't see Essendon bouncing back from... They'll get a response. The Essendon Edge might be back this week, but yeah, I can't see them beating the Bulldogs at Marvel Stadium.
There's a lot made on social media about the Essendon Edge after Friday. I mean, it really felt like it was a complete 180 from where they were in the last 2 weeks to how they sort of fell to bits against Port Adelaide. This is a big game because you do feel like Essendon, St Kilda Bulldogs are amongst that group of teams that are sort of in around that I don't want to use the word mid-table because I feel like that has quite a negative connotation, but amongst those sides battling for finals this year, and these are the games that you quite frankly have to win. But I think the Bulldogs are just going to be too strong. I think the way they finish the game, they can take plenty of confidence out of. You mentioned Sam Darcy. He's been in great form. Another tip for those at home, he's been kicking multiple goals the last few weeks, and I think he continues that again this week. And I think the Bulldogs are just going to be a bit too strong for the Bombers on Friday night. Saturday afternoon in Canberra, the Giants against the Saints. The Giants still undefeated. They were pushed against Gold Coast yesterday, taking on a St Kilda team who had to do it quite hard. I mean, they barely, for most of that first half, hadn't even kicked a goal. But then after half time, they were able to run over the Tigers and come away with a narrow win. But going to be a real tough test for St Kilda heading to the capital.
Oh, no bigger test than footy at the moment, I don't think, than playing the Giants. They are red hot. The Suns gave them a really good push on Sunday out in the Adelaide Hills. But, yeah, they were too strong, so they remained undefeated on top of the ladder, the Giants. And, yeah, the St Kilda were absolutely abysmal in that first half. To look at the scores and they had not kicked a goal a minute before halftime, it's just staggering. Ross Lyon had a pretty good explanation after the game. He thought aliens had replaced his players on the field, and that's why they were so poor. So they will take some confidence out of that game, even though they were absolutely terrible in that first half, to actually still respond in the second half, get the job done, get that important win. Richmond are going to really challenge teams this year. They probably won't win too many games, but they're going to make you really earn it. So for St Kilda to run out strong and get that done was, probably a good result for them in the end. But I think the Giants in Canberra, they haven't had the best record there in recent times. That was a bit of a fortress there under Leon Cameron, but it's dropped away in the last 3 years. But I think they'll be too strong, probably win by about 5 goals.
Yeah, I think the Giants will win this one quite comfortably. I think, as you said, St Kilda can take a lot out of that second half because, they just seemed dead in the first half, really. So the way that they were able to respond, come away with the win, consistency's just been the issue for them. When they come away with a win, just backing that up. I mean, what we saw against Essendon a few weeks ago was, again, talk about 180s. It's that 180 we saw from what they dished up against Collingwood. So going to the capital, GWS have got all this, this wind behind them at the moment. They're just riding the waves. And, Toby Green kicking 5 goals yesterday. He had a bit of a quiet start to the season. Now he's confident. It takes that forward line to another level. And this guy right here, Jesse Hogan, has just been absolutely flying at the moment. I think he'll kick multiple goals in this game too. And the Giants are going to run away with yet another win and continue their undefeated start. Back here in Melbourne at Marvel Stadium, the Blues against the Crows. I mean, at the start of this season, you look at this game and you go, this is looking like, if you're going to pencil in a game to watch, this would be the one. But it's been contrasting fortunes for both sides. The Crows still without a win. Carlton just survived by the skin of their teeth. And, I mean, a lot can be made of that sort of 1 minute patch, of the, was it touched, a bit of dissent from Jordan Clark as well. But the Blues keep on winning. They keep getting 4 points on the board, and now they welcome an Adelaide team who right now their season is hanging by a thread.
Yeah, the shades of Collingwood there in 22 and obviously last year, they just keep getting the job done. You look at it and you could say they're lucky, but they keep finding ways to win. They could be 1-3, but they're 4-0. Maybe 2-2. That's probably where they're at. But yeah, 4-0, they will take that every day of the week. And yeah, I think Adelaide, they're just in an absolute rut. I saw them first down on Thursday night at the Adelaide Oval, and just their forward connection. It's just, you could say what Ross Lyon said about Adelaide. They're not the same team this year that they were last year. Tex Walker is a shadow of himself from last year. He was All-Australian, looked to be in career best form, but he did have a couple of minor injury setbacks in the preseason, so maybe that's still affecting him. But yeah, he seems to have lost a bit. So that is really concerning because other guys aren't stepping up. And yeah, I just think Carlton, their midfield, their forward line, I just think it's going to be too strong for Adelaide at Marvel Stadium. And yeah, the Crows would be 0-5, and you're not coming back from 0-5.
Yeah.
And that would really put the heat on Matthew Nicks there. So yeah, the Blues way too strong probably. Yeah, it could get ugly, I reckon. Could be 10 goals if they get a run on, because Adelaide just can't seem to to get in games and kick enough goals.
Only weeks after that contract extension as well. So that's just going to create another layer to the ever-evolving plot that's going to be happening with Matthew Nicks for the remainder of this season. I mean, from memory, I think only really one team in recent history has come back to make finals from that sort of deficit. It was Sydney in 2017 were 0-6, I believe.
0-6, yeah, and they still made the finals, made a semi-final.
Yeah.
But they were coming off a grand final themselves. So they were
not playing finals for 5 or 6 years before that.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. So it's so different. But I think, you're right. Carlton will win this game comfortably. I think 30-plus points is probably around the mark. I think if you're a Crows fan, just be hoping to see something, a bit of effort.
Yeah.
But stopping the form of Kerno Mackay at the moment is going to be so difficult for them. And if this game becomes a shootout, it's over. Like, this has almost got to be, it's got to be in the mud for them to have any sort of chance. But Carlton will win this game quite comfortably. Saturday night up in Gold Coast, the Suns take on the Hawks. Gold Coast, 2 losses in a row, but a much improved performance as we mentioned. Hawthorn, though, they might be without a win, but they could take so much out of that game against Collingwood. In particular, Blake Hardwick, with an inspired move from Sam Mitchell to move him forward. He almost won the game basically off his own boot in the second half.
He did. He was sensational, and he's so good in defence, but he's so good up forward as well. And maybe they just have to stick with him up there because they are missing a few really important players up forward. And to push Collingwood to 5 points, and arguably they should have won that game, like you said, they'll take a lot of confidence out of that. They were missing Mitchell Lewis, they were missing Nick Watson, the Wizard, and Luke Bruce was laid out too. So that's 3 of your best forwards out of that forward line. And Hardwick just stepped up, and he's a very underrated player, I think, because he's played in a side that hasn't been that good for the last 5 or 6 years. He's sort of been overlooked, but terrific. Gold Coast up there though, it's going to be a big challenge. Gold Coast, they're building a bit of a fortress there at Carrara now. It's going to be super hard for teams to win at what they're calling it, People First Stadium now. Got to keep up. But, I think the Suns get the job done. There might be a bit of a letdown after the Hawks got so close in that game and didn't quite get the win. So, I think the Suns to bounce back. They went bad against Giants. So they'll take a bit out of that. And I think, back at home, they should get the win. Yeah,
I think the changes that Damien Hardwick, talking about Hardwicks, I mean, Dimmer made those moves, made a lot of changes going into that game. There was over 6 or 7 changes and, 3 debutants as well against the Giants, and they were all very impressive. I think going into this game against Hawthorn back at home, they won their first 2 games there this year. Yes, you can make of it, how tight it got against Adelaide and, the way that they let Richmond back into the game, but they still got the job done. I think there's no such thing as, again, it's a cliche as, honourable losses, but I think if there ever was one, that on Sunday it was that, probably for both teams. But I think Gold Coast is just going to be too strong. But from a Hawks perspective, Jai Newcomb's been back in some really good form, and I think 25 disposals or more is looking the goods for Jai Newcomb. The other game on Saturday night, now this is another big game. The Dockers are coming back to the place of pain from Saturday. They're going back to Adelaide to take on Port Adelaide, who are now playing a 3rd straight game at Adelaide Oval, fresh off that big win against the Bombers. I mean, big chance for Freo to bounce back against a really tough team, but God, the way they lost, they'd be absolutely kicking themselves because the game was right there for them to come away with what would have been a real statement victory against Carlton.
Oh, it would have been. That was so close. I didn't actually see that game live, but I checked the scores before I went out for dinner, and they were 10 points up with a few minutes to go, and I thought, I tipped them. So I was like, they're home, and then checked the scores after dinner, and Carlton had pulled off yet another miracle. So, devastating for the Dockers. They would have been 4-0 for the first time since, 2015, I think. But, rough for the Dockers. They've got to go back to the scene of the crime 1 week later. So, a big chance for redemption there. And Port Adelaide, I'm surprised with the odds here. Fremantle paying $3.25. I know Port Adelaide were really good on Friday night, but on the other end, Essendon were so bad, as we spoke about before. So, Port Adelaide's midfield, which ran right, they're not going to get the same sort of freedom that they did against the Bombers. Fremantle play this really defensive style and make it low scoring. So, I think Port Adelaide but it could come down to a kick again, and Dockers fans might be in for more heartbreak. So, really close one, but I think the power just because it's home. If it was over in Perth, I'd be tipping the Dockers every time. Yeah,
I think this could be one of the games of the week, just from a close perspective. I don't think it's going to be a high-scoring spectacle, but it will be a very tight affair. I think it was Cal Toomey who said that Port Adelaide midfield three right now could be the best in the competition, or one of the Rosie, Butters, Horn-Francis trio, and Jason Horn-Francis. For all the conjecture about him, to talk about that talent that's always been there, he was on another level on Friday night. And again, talking about a tip, 25 disposals or more for Horn-Francis looks good. But Connor Rozee as well, 30-plus possessions, 3 goals.
Yeah, it's magnificent.
Just unbelievable. And I think Port Adelaide will win this game. Freo, though, will put up a good fight. But I think Port Adelaide can have just that little bit more class when it matters. And I think Justin Longmuir will be having some big discussions with the group. I think a bit of ill-discipline just in those key moments. For Jordan Clark to do that, understand heat of the moment. You're frustrated, that you see the ball get potentially touched on the way to Matt Cottrell marking it, but, you just got to get on with it. There was still time for him to, win a clearance and get another chance at goal, but just an absolute, sucker punch for them to concede that free kick and then concede another goal, and the game was lost. So we'll see how the Dockers respond on Saturday night. But on Sunday, we mentioned it a little bit earlier, the Cats against the Roos. Talking about odds, North Melbourne are paying around $12.50 for this game against the Cats. I'm fearful. I'm very fearful for what could happen for North Melbourne in this game, because we've seen some big losses in the past, but this could be right up there. And we saw what Jeremy Cameron was able to do last week and Tom Hawkins a week before, and you throw that in with North Melbourne's bad defence, and this could get quite ugly down there in Geelong.
Yeah, I can't see it being close at all. North Melbourne, I think they'll get a bit of a response from last week, because that was by far their worst performance of the season. I think Clarkson will really have them revved up for this one. But, yeah, on paper, there's probably no more one-sided matchup you can get. I think last year the Eagles went to Brisbane, played at the Gabba. The odds were about $34 for the Eagles to win that one. So maybe this one's second behind that. But, yeah, Geelong are in ripping form. They look back to their 2022 premiership form. All their big guns are up and going. Tyson Stengel kicked 4 goals the other night. He was down last year after his All-Australian year in 2022. So they are just firing. And they've just got multiple options now. Stengel's stepping up again. Ollie Henry's really good. He's come along. He's only his 4th year, so he's got a big career in front of him. Then Ollie Dempsey going for all these speckies, and very exciting player. So, yeah, I don't know what North Melbourne do. They might have to actually go a bit defensive this week. Otherwise, it could be verging into record territory. Just can't see it being under 10 goals at all. If it is under 10 goals, I think North Melbourne will probably take that as a win down there.
Well, look, we've seen strange things happen before in football. We've seen upsets, when bottom's beaten top and everything like that, but not down the highway, not like this.
Not at Geelong.
And not right now. I think all the injuries that North Melbourne have, how depleted their defensive, line is at the moment, even going into this season, and the way Jeremy Cameron and Hawkins are playing. I've said as a tip, Jeremy Cameron to kick multiple goals, but that's very vague, because it could be 3.
10.
Yeah, he could kick 10. I mean, Hawkins could kick 10 as well.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the form that they're in at the moment, and that's the form, conversely, that North Melbourne are in. So I think Geelong win this one quite comfortably, in a bit of a percentage booster for them. The final game of the round, though, over in Perth, West Coast against Richmond. From a West Coast perspective, talking about positives, I mean, they were great against Sydney, and they really gave Sydney a scare. Obviously, just fell away in the end, and we saw a bit of a coming out party for Harley Reid, and the West Australian would have been loving that one coming up against Richmond, who competitive. They put up a good fight, but again, they just don't have the players to kick a winning score at the moment. Is this maybe the chance for an upset for West Coast, or a Richmond? Even with all the outs, just going to be too strong in Optus Stadium?
I think the Eagles have to look at it like that. They were vastly improved against the Swans. All their older players stepped up, and that was key. The younger guys have been giving them something all season, but it was guys like Yo, Kelly. Darling was still down, unfortunately. But, yeah, the Eagles players, they gave themselves a red-hot chance. At halftime, you thought, could this actually even happen? Swan supporters in the crowd were getting very nervous, so you could tell. And even at the end of the game, the Swans players on the field, they were acting like it was a loss or it was a draw, because both sets of players were just slumped down on the field. So, yeah, the Eagles have to take some confidence out of that after being so bad the week before against the Bulldogs. So, at home, you have to view this as a chance to get that first win. I'm going to give them a sneaky chance. I think Richmond probably will get the job done, but it's not going to be belting at all.
No.
I can't see it being a belting. Richmond's top liners are just still elite. Like Shai Bolton was just amazing against St Kilda, showing his class and almost single-handedly got them over the line. But yeah, I think Tigers might get their second win, but only just. It'll be a bit of a scrap.
Well, even talking about those top liners, I mean, Dusty in the first half wound back the clock a little bit. He was brilliant. I mean, you know, when you got him in that sort of form, you know, you can do anything. And I think it's going to be tough for West Coast to get it done against Richmond. I think they will give them a fight, but I think Richmond will just have a bit more class when it matters, and they'll come away with their second win of the season. But yeah, Tim Taranto's been in some good form. Expect him to get around 25 or more disposals. He's been, you know, accumulating the ball for fun over the last couple of years, and I expect him to do more of the same. Ollie, thank you very much for joining me again. Looking forward to another big round of footy.
Yeah, back into it Thursday night, so comes around quick.